And so let's do a little review of some of the highlights of what we found in our previous session. Julie, I'll read these things. So we learned in chapter 13.1 that what is guilt? It's a judgment of one mind by another that judges the other as being unworthy of love and deserving of punishment. And whenever we have even the slightest notion of that idea, it splits our mind between our most holy mind and the mind that's doing the judging. And it separates us from our own higher self. So we learn in the course that guilt and peace are exact opposites, that love and guilt cannot coexist. And by accepting and practicing one of them in your mind, it acts as an obstacle or a denial of the other. And in truth, as we will read again in this session, you're really in a state of condemning yourself, even though you're projecting it outwards onto somebody else. And in so doing, you can't know your true spiritual nature. And so this is exactly what the ego wants, because it teaches you to attack yourself. It wants you to feel guilty. And this attacking of yourself, self-debasement, is in itself increases your feelings of guilt. And so all of this is a delusional system that comes about by feeling as though we are part of the illusions of time and assuming all the problems of time and space those are our problems and we're guilty. Guilt has a relationship to time. It is a way of believing that the past and future in your mind, so that you keep remembering and being preoccupied with the guilt of the past and the fears of the future. And without this guilt, here's the real key. Without guilt, the ego has no life. For the truth is that your spiritual being is without guilt. And finally, God, what does that have to do with the right here and now? God is not waiting for us to be finished with time and escape from the illusions of time. His presence, his gifts, our inheritance are ours right now already. They're in his mind, and we are forever members of the mind of God. So those were some of the highlights from section 13.1. Hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and Julie is our reader for this session as we go into section 13.2. Julie?
The ultimate purpose of projection is always to get rid of guilt. Yet characteristically, the ego attempts to get rid of guilt from its viewpoint only. For much as the ego wants to retain guilt, you find it intolerable, since guilt stands in the way of your remembering God, whose pull is so strong that you cannot resist it. On this issue, then, the deepest split of all occurs. For if you are to retain guilt, as the ego insists, you cannot be you. Only by persuading you that it is you Could the ego possibly induce you to project guilt and thereby keep it in your mind?
Mm-hmm. You want to do that last sentence one more time?
Sure.
Only by persuading?
Yes, only by persuading you that it is you could the ego possibly induce you to project guilt and thereby keep it in your mind.
Excellent. Thank you. So this first paragraph is really important. It lays some of the foundational principles that will follow. Um, and it's this strange relationship that we have with guilt. On one hand, it's intolerable. The feelings of guilt are intolerable. And so the mind naturally wants to escape from those feelings. Thus, it attempts to project the belief and the ideas about guilt outward onto the external world, including onto other people, which in so doing, the ego believes that it's getting rid of guilt, but it's actually reinforces the guilt because you're still practicing, you're still reinforcing and giving the power of your mind to the idea of guilt. And so the ultimate purpose, we're talking about projection, the ultimate purpose of projection is to get rid of the guilt, but it doesn't work. The guilt still remains around for the reasons that we just said. And nothing could, I think this is really a very firm and clear statement within the Course. On this issue, the deepest split of your mind, the deepest split of all, occurs in your mind. 4, if you are to retain guilt, which is the ego's secret plan, then you would have to be something other than a holy child of God. You would have to be something other than part of the mind of God. You would have to be an ego or a body. You'd have to be something else. And so the ego attempts and constantly to persuade you that the ego is you. And so complete confusion comes about as a result of all this. And we wind up trafficking, is my word, trafficking in guilt, being dealers of guilt, projecting it outward, all the while tolerating this belief about ourselves, which is upside down and confused, and it keeps the guilt in our minds. So this doesn't have to be totally logically clear to you. Just know that there's trickery going on here. And it shows up, evidence of it is every time you complain about somebody else or something else, every time you reject what happened in life, that you're not okay with it, you're resistant to it, that's evidence that your mind is trying to project the problem outward, and know that that's the tell that it still has not been effectively dealt with inwardly. And we will get to the dealing with it inwardly in a moment. Most of this occurs at a level that few people are aware of. Remember, we're talking about the deepest split of all. It's deep in your subconscious mind. Perhaps if you studied psychology for decades or a person that's keenly insightful about such matters. You might have some awareness of this, but I would say the vast majority of us owe it to the Course in Miracles of identifying the role that this guilt has in us. When I know I've read some of the most renowned psychiatrists of all, and I did not find them to have identified this problem with guilt. Because why? Because ultimately it's feeling guilty in your relationship with God. And that's an area the psychiatrists are, so to speak, barred from discussing. They can't go there, so they look for other explanations. So the deepest split of all occurs in this effort for the ego to project guilt outward, but then really retain it inwardly, and thus confuse you about your own being, your own nature. This does not, what we just said does not have to be completely clear at the moment. Again, the entire chapter is around this hidden secret of the ego.
Yet consider how strange a solution the ego's arrangement is. You project guilt to get rid of it, but you are actually merely concealing it. You do experience the guilt, but you have no idea why. On the contrary, you associate it with a weird assortment of ego ideals, which the ego claims you have failed. Yet you have no idea that you are failing the Son of God by seeing him as guilty. Believing you are no longer you, you do not realize that you are failing yourself.
Mm-hmm. So I want to speak really frankly, because I know I've had this experience myself. I read A Course in Miracles for years, and I had no idea what they're talking about, this guilt. Because I said, I'm not feeling guilty. I don't get it. I don't feel it. I don't recognize. I'm talking about me in the past, reading Course in Miracles and all these statements. I said, I do not recognize in myself what they're talking about. I can't identify with it. Well, let me propose an idea. And that is, I think it's lesson 30 or 31, workbook lesson 30 or 31. My mind is a part of God's. I am very holy. The ego cringes at that message. And I did it as well when I first read it. I said, oh, I'm taken back. I'm very holy. My mind is a part of God's. So this is a tell of the issue, is that there is this false identity within us that wants to deny our inner light, our inner being. Everyone that walks the path of the ego has this, whether you're fully conscious of it or not, to deny our inner light and to somehow feel like that's even almost wrong, or delusions of grandeur, label it whatever you want, to even speak of such things. My mind is very holy. I am a part of God. But that's the tell. That's the part, is wanting to fail your true self, your divine self, believing that you are no longer your true self, but instead you're some version of a human being and you live in a body and then you die and that's all you get. Believing that you are an ego would be the ego's perfectly fine with that narrative, but is will do whatever it can to make you feel uncomfortable with the Holy Spirit's counter narrative. You are a part of God, your mind is very holy. So it's a strange solution that the ego's arrangement has brought about. And it remains largely concealed within our subconscious mind. Who talks about these things? I mean, prior to A Course in Miracles, did you talk with your associates about these kinds of existential issues? I know I didn't.
The darkest of your hidden cornerstones holds your belief in guilt from your awareness. For in that dark and secret place is the realization that you have betrayed God's Son by condemning him to death. You do not even suspect this murderous but insane idea lies hidden there, for the ego's destructive urge is so intense that nothing short of the crucifixion of God's Son can ultimately satisfy it. It does not know who the Son of God is because it is blind. Yet let it perceive guiltlessness anywhere, and it will try to destroy it because it is afraid.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned earlier this some of the what we read this session are a little difficult to be comfortable with. This is the beginning of it, but let's break it down to what they're saying. They're talking about, first of all, this dark and hidden secret of the ego surrounding guilt. And it states plainly it holds your belief in guilt from your awareness. This is not, this is what this very point I'm about to say tripped me up for years. I thought they were talking about something that I did earlier in my life. I thought, there were things that I did by the time I was age 20 that's where the guilt was about. Something I did myself. Well, that would be a very superficial understanding of what we're talking about because those things are not hidden from my mind. I can tell you exactly some of the things I did before age 20 that did not turn out so well, that were not good decisions. None of that is hidden from me, and I suspect that you as well. What we're talking about is something that is unconscious, hidden from your awareness in a subconscious, dark, and secret place. And it's a realization of betrayal of your inner holiness. It's a realization of being at a distance with your divine inheritance. And it's expressed here in very strong dramatic language, but we can express it also in psychological terms or even in philosophic terms. Here it's expressed in what I would call historic Christology of Christ on the cross terms, and there's reasons for that, but know that these symbols are being applied more broadly outside of the historic Christology story and applying to what we all go through when we have this separation from our inner holiness and embrace our own ego instead of our inner holiness. And so again, we'll continue to explore this, but the point I want you to take away from here is that you're not directly in touch with the very reasons why we carry this guilt around. For in other words, most people cannot articulate the reasons that the Course gives for this guilt because it was something you did not have an understanding of when it all got started. Heidi?
So how do we get to a place where we can understand it so it's not in a dark secret place? How do I bring it to the light?
I like that question. I think that this session is a part of that, Heidi. The Course would say that the Holy Spirit sees these things entirely differently than you and I do. Holy Spirit's not confused, and that she can shine the light of truth on these beliefs of the ego, and that together with A Course in Miracles, we can examine these hidden secrets and see that they make no sense. And we're actually in the process of doing that now.
Thank you.
It doesn't end with the material we're reading tonight, but it's a process that's underway.
So it's basically, I need to ask the Holy Spirit to show me the light to take away the guilt.
I'll be more specific. That would be part of it. Yes, you need her help, but specifically, you need to understand what the textbook is saying here. You need to be willing to learn under the Holy Spirit's guidance what they're talking about here.
Thank you.
There's something in this message that is uniquely crafted as a teaching tool for us. And so it's necessary. Matter of fact, it even says in the workbook that the textbook is essential to understand the background, the foundation for why we do the workbook. Okay. So the ego's got this darkened, hidden cornerstones in our mind that have remained secret, and it has to do with an alienation towards our own divine inheritance. It has to do with something that we'll call condemnation of our condemnation of the sons of God, which will become more clear as we go forward.
Much of the ego's strange behavior is directly attributable to its definition of guilt. To the ego, the guiltless are guilty. Those who do not attack are its enemies, because by not valuing its interpretation of salvation, they are in an excellent position to let it go. They have approached the darkest and deepest cornerstone in the ego's foundation. And while the ego can withstand your raising all else to question, it guards this one secret with its life, for its existence depends on keeping this secret. So it is this secret that we must look upon, for the ego cannot protect you against truth, and in its presence, the ego is dispelled.
Well, it happened again. Heidi, I think that was the answer to your question. What can we do? So that's what I mean about the textbook. You asked the question, Heidi, and the answer was right here in the next paragraph. It's written in a way to help guide us through this understanding. And so let's look at the solution, because Heidi's question is, how do we become free? That's what all of us should be thinking, is those who do not attack others, who do not weaponize their mind to criticize, condemn, and complain about the situation they find themselves in or the people they find themselves surrounded by. They do not attack by not valuing the ego's interpretation of salvation. They are in an excellent position to let it go. If that wasn't clear, we are not endorsing the ego's interpretation by using our mind to criticize, condemn, and complain about the situation and the people and the things they did, or for that matter, to point the finger at ourselves and criticize, condemn, and complain about ourselves. We're not using our mind to attack anyone or anything. Workbook lesson 287, let all things be exactly as they are. So that puts, by not attacking, and this is the criteria, do not attack with your mind, puts you in an excellent position to let it go. And this is exactly what Heidi asked. By doing that, they have approached the darkest and deepest cornerstone in the ego's foundation. But this one secret that the ego guards with its life, we're going to look at it and see this is the secret that we must look upon. The secret that the ego guards with its life. And what is that secret? We got to be really make sure that we're clear here. And that is the ego views guilt as salvation. It views it. Think of all the times your mind has been used to attack reality, to be frustrated with the situation or the people. Think of all your complaints and your all those problems that define the ego. That's what the ego wants you to remain encrusted in, that mindset, that the guilt that guilt is your salvation. It's a secret we must look upon, and to be continued in the next paragraph. I don't think anything could be more clear in the course, where it says this is the darkest and deepest cornerstone. It guards this one secret with its life, and we must look at this secret. But notice, Heidi, we're not doing this with a psychoanalyst looking at these matters. We're doing this with the aid of the textbook and with the help of the Holy Spirit to help us understand the meaning. Julie?
In the calm light of truth, let us recognize that you believe you have crucified God's Son. You have not admitted to this terrible secret because you would still wish to crucify him if you could find him. Yet the wish has hidden him from you because it is very fearful, and so you are afraid to find him. You have handled this wish to kill yourself by not knowing who you are and identifying with someone else. You have projected guilt blindly and indiscriminately, but you have not uncovered its source. For the ego does want to kill you, and if you identify with it, you must believe its goal is yours.
Well, I promised you that some of this would be a little difficult to face head on. Well, here we are, one of the most taboo of all topics in our world, not within this program. What are we talking about? We're talking about a death wish. We're talking about a wish to die, Yes, you can project it out onto others and want to kill them or wish they were dead. When I was a child, using foul language, I used to tell people, go to hell, which is basically a death wish. Um, I didn't really mean it. I was just, picked up slang because I thought it was cool or whatever. But what we're talking about here is really the ego's that has a death wish. Let's just state the facts. The ego wants you dead. It wishes for your death and will not be happy without it, will persist in this. And because it operates within your mind, it will prompt you with feelings and thoughts of despair and hopelessness and lead you down to the line of maybe I'd be better off if I didn't live at all. Or some kind of variation on that theme. And whether you point that finger at yourself or point it at someone else, it's still the wish for death. So it really doesn't matter. But yet, the way we heal is to heal on the inside. And so we have to be willing to look directly at this secret of the ego's wish to kill you. How? By completely blinding you to the truth of your divine nature and identifying with something else. So that's what we're dealing with here. Is that dark and deep enough? I think that's probably all as far as we need to go for dark and deep. Heidi?
I'm sorry, I just really, really want to get this. So, is this saying that any thought we have that is not a thought of love is a thought of guilt?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now by love, Heidi, we mean broad-based. So love, peace,
Correct.
happiness, joy, gentle, kindness, all that. Any is not a thought of love, is really a thought of confusion and therefore of guilt. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So notice fundamental to all this is a false identity, a imposter syndrome of identifying with someone else. This is the very center of the confusion. Is the ego wants you to believe that you are the ego, and when you're not. And so it's an imposter proposing as yourself and working incessantly to convince you that it's true. And if you identify with it, the laws of mind kick in. Let's say you don't know any. I don't know, it just crossed my mind when I heard someone give their testimony. It said at age 16, she took a bottle of pills in an effort to kill herself. This happens. And if you identify with the ego, you must believe that its goal for you to die, you must believe that its goal is your goal. And this is sad and tragic. I'm in no way okay with those outcomes, but we witness, even in the last 10 years, an uptick in suicides across not only young people under 25, but now increasingly in other older populations as well. This is the wish to kill oneself. If you knew that the ego had planted this great lie in your mind and that you could rid yourself of it, wouldn't that be useful to know? I'm sorry, Julie, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Jonica. So, thinking about how, it's often explained that, for example, the impulse or the decision to end one's life is characterized as a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I get behind that entirely, but um, I think when I have been in places where I thought that living was a burden, I had this idea that I was suffering immeasurably on all levels. So I think, in chapter 13, that's a good place to be. And I'm glad it's not my first time through the book. And I, there's a much, I suppose the road to feeling, the road to feeling like alignment with the Holy Spirit brings peace is something that it took me a while to get to. Maybe it doesn't take other people, as long to get there, but there's so much, or there was for me anyway, so much of a need to release so many different beliefs and ideas that seemed to me to be very different than the statement about, oh, well, this is the ego's idea. It's not part of your nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what were you talking about? Releasing, Julie, things that you've experienced in your life?
Well, basically just releasing the idea that my life is supposed to be a certain way or another. For example,
Yes.
being aligned with the course, there's a prescription for how to think and for how to act and for how to correct that I didn't have, before I started studying in a purposeful way.
Yeah, yeah. It really is, Julie, a very gradual, for most people, this is a very gradual untangling of a big knot that we could have never figured out the complexity of on our own. And it does help to go through the book more than once in the way that we're doing it here, kind of line by line, paragraph by paragraph, so that the profundity of what's being said is not lost to us. And, because ultimately, as it's said here, we have to be willing to look directly at this dark secret about having to do with our own death wish. And no one ever. Now, I did read about the death wish in psychological books, but it never helped guide me through a process where I could untangle the idea. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. But thank you for your sharing, Julie. So yes, there's a lot to this. The untangling, this is not a quick fix, like read this section tonight and you're good. This is a part of a lesson along a path of many lessons, which accumulatively help one to realize that the ideas that I came to believe in the past are not serving me well, and I gladly and willingly let them go for these new ideas that Holy Spirit is teaching. I do know, and I've seen it, there's more than enough evidence just with the people that are attending this meeting that this program is having a profound impact on our lives. So the proof is in the evidence of one's life, of no longer being so much a victim of the ego's thought system, feeling like there was nothing I could do about it, and instead gradually learning to train one's mind so that we don't invest in those ego-laden narratives. All right, we'll go on.
I have said that the crucifixion is the symbol of the ego. When it was confronted with real guiltlessness of God's Son, it did attempt to kill him. And the reason it gave was that guiltlessness is blasphemous to God. To the ego is God, and guiltlessness must be interpreted as the final guilt that fully justifies murder. You do not yet understand that any fear you may experience in connection with this course stems ultimately from this interpretation. But if you will consider your reactions to it, you will become increasingly convinced that this is so.
So I'm in the awkward position of trying to help you to understand something I don't understand myself. You do not yet understand any fear in connection with this course stems ultimately from this interpretation, which is that guiltlessness must be interpreted as the final guilt that fully justifies murder. Obviously, we're talking, this is the ego's interpretation, and that is the ego. It comes from, let's set the foundation. The ego wants to be your Lord, your God. It wants to be your director and controller. It wants to guide you completely. And so any attempt to embrace a teaching system about innocence flies in the face of the ego's teaching system. You're confronting this, we're talking about the deepest split of all. You're confronting the ego directly by especially using the workbook lessons. And what the ego does is it tries to then confuse our mind and with thinking that all this talk about innocence, guiltlessness, is really, we call it folding back on itself. You wind up finishing where you began with the same self-confusion before that questions your very life, your very identity, what you're doing here, and why would I want to live in such a situation. For in other words, it's like a trap that we cannot get out of. And so that, here's perhaps the little insight that I have here. That causes you to question this course. That attitude of the ego Now, I'm not talking about necessarily the people that are in this listening to this video, but I'm talking about the hundreds of people that spend 3 to 6 months in the course and then drop out. They give up on themselves for whatever reason. Not understanding any fear that they may experience in connection with this course stems from this confusion about the one's identity. And I'll just elaborate one more time because I know the experience myself and I've seen it in others. There comes a point when someone first starts practicing the course, it might come at 6 months, maybe it comes later, maybe it comes sooner, where you've got these two voices in your head. One is the familiar voice from the past telling you to do one thing, and the other is this new voice, the Holy Spirit, telling you to do other things. And it ping pongs back and forth throughout the day. And that is disturbing. And people say that they can't live under that condition. They quit the course so that the ping ponging stops and they just stop listening to the Holy Spirit and just listen to the ego. They feel like, so it's fear that they may experience in connection with this course. It comes from this very issue of the ego wanting to be your God and wanting you to never identify with the light.
This course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace, yet you are afraid of it. You have been told again and again that it will set you free, yet you sometimes react as if it is trying to imprison you. You often dismiss it more readily than you dismiss the ego's thought system. To some extent, then, you must believe that by not learning the course, you are protecting yourself. And you do not realize that it is only your guiltlessness that can protect you.
So, what we're just saying is a result of having invested in the ego identity, things are all turned upside down. That which is true appears to be false. That which is false appears to be true. Matter of fact, even the distinction between guilt and innocence becomes confusing under the ego's tutelage. So the Holy Spirit has this really big to do to help us to see, to Heidi's question, to see clearly what is the dark secret and what is the light of truth, to see both of them in one period of time, Heidi, so that you can say, oh, that's what my choice consists of, a death wish or a wish for happiness and peace. Now I see what is available to me, and I'm going to commit to finding a path of happiness and peace. Obviously, it might be sounding like it's a simple matter, just do that. I know that this requires breaking the habits of thinking of oneself as an ego. And for me, multiple passes through the workbook are essential for building these new habits.
The atonement has always been interpreted as the release from guilt, and this is correct if it is understood. Yet even when I interpret it for you, you may reject it and do not accept it for yourself. You have perhaps recognized the futility of the ego and its offerings. But though you do not want them, you may not yet look upon the alternative with gladness. In the extreme, you are afraid of redemption, and you believe it will kill you. Make no mistake about the depth of this fear, for you believe that, in the presence of truth, you might turn on yourself and destroy yourself.
Again, some very dire statements about confusion with the Spirit's plan of salvation and wind up fearing the depth. Make no mistake about the depth of this fear, because an ego is enmeshed in an entire worldview that has to do with fear. And the notion of abandoning that, of your consciously choosing to let it go, that's a existential choice on your part. And it requires that you be willing to trust the Holy Spirit. Heidi, the essence of this program is a newfound trust in the Holy Spirit's guidance, right, to lead us through the valley of the shadow of evil. What is the Psalms? The valley well, help me here. Valley of the shadow of good.
Of death, I shall fear no evil.
Yes. So that's the valley that we have to walk out of in order to, and the Holy Spirit is the one to guide us through there. I'm seeing an image. Can imagine Moses and his people where the Red Sea is parted and trying to walk down through that land there. Just the image of it takes courage. You have to trust your leader. And in this case, the Holy Spirit is our leader. Heidi?
I just want to share real quick something really wonderful that's happened to me. For some reason, I just couldn't get chapter 12. And I kept saying, I'm not getting it. You know, what's wrong with me? Blah, blah, blah. And I have reached a point now where I realize that's what my ego wants. And that's not truth. And so what I've been able to do now is when I get to the point where I don't get it or don't understand it, I realize that my ego's keeping me from it, to hang in there, and there's brightness on the other side. And it's been really cool to experience that.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Heidi. And I also would point out, Heidi, that if you went out and planted an acorn in the ground and came back a week later and said, "Where's the tree?" that would be an unreasonable expectation to immediately have the full evidence of your growth. The trust that all things are exactly as they should be, and that the Holy Spirit has all those gems of truth safeguarded for you. And then in the exact day when your mind is in a position to make sense of it, it will be there. That's the advantage of having a personal guide through this.
Little child, this is not so. Your guilty secret is nothing, and if you will but bring it to the light will dispel it. And then no dark cloud will remain between you and the remembrance of your Father, for you will remember his guiltless Son, who did not die because he is immortal, and you will see that you were redeemed with him, and have never been separated from him. In this understanding lies your remembering, for it is the recognition of love without fear. There will be great joy in heaven on your homecoming, and the joy will be yours. For the redeemed Son of Man is the guiltless Son of God, and to recognize him is your redemption.
Mhm. So Heidi's question at the beginning really was, well, how are we going to get out of this nightmare of the ego? And this is the process. This existential secret, this epic secret of the ego is really nothing. It's like a fairy tale. It's like a child's nightmare. It's not a reality. And what we did today and will continue to do is bring that nightmare out to the light and let the light dispel it. And then the no dark cloud will remain in our minds. And so it's a process. It does not necessarily, we're done to that now. The acorn has grown into a giant oak tree in one session, but keep watering that acorn every day and trusting in the Holy Spirit's guidance, and the progress is amazing. So some of the things that we learned today, just in some by way of summary here, is that this issue with guilt is the very issue we must deal with if we are ever to become free from a belief system centered on fear. And if we in the past have identified with the ego, then we wind up believing that the goal of the ego is our own goal. And the ego, I'll remind you, wants you dead. And you wind up thinking, I'm better off dead. That's because of an identity confusion. And so this depth of this secret is kept hidden in your subconscious mind behind the belief in death. For in other words, it's all clustered together inside of this interconnected delusional system that has to do with death and fear and guilt. And these are perhaps the greatest fears of humanity. And so they're not trivial. They're not a one session and we're done. They are a part of an undoing and unpacking. And so we will have to approach the fear of death and realize all of what the ego has taught us about that. And meanwhile, the way we keep this going, the symptoms that show up is projecting the guilt out onto the world, out onto other people, which is in truth a means of concealing our inner guilt. And the Course tells us that this is the deepest split when we wind up believing that we are an ego and that we can free ourselves of the guilt by making other people the guilty ones. Ego's existence depends on keeping this a secret, Heidi. This is the secret that none of us knew. That the whole process of projecting reinforces and keeps the secret buried. So to heal, it is this secret we must look upon and undo the pattern in our mind, the habit of projecting guilt outwards, of criticizing, condemning, and complaining about the world, what I call the evil world theory, and what other people are doing, and realize that within our own mind that's where the deepest split has occurred, and that's where the healing must occur. And this reading that we've done tonight is a major part in unveiling that secret. It's a secret no more. And so thank you for being willing to consider these ideas. These were always taboo topics, and even to today, not just in the past, but these remain. That there are few circles. Even I was a grief counselor for a period of time. We don't talk about these things in these terms. So the way that we looked at this and exposed this fear of death and this deep secret about guilt is unique to this program. And so I honor you for the courage to be willing to look at the secrets of the ego. Thank you all for your presence, for your attention. Julie, thank you for your reading. Heidi, thank you for your questions also. Namaste.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Jonica.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
He continued.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone.